Hey, I'm Baz, and welcome back to 20 Minute Gamer, the channel where I test whether a game can hook you in just 20 minutes. As a busy dad and filmmaker, I don't have hours to burn hoping a game gets good, so I judge games by their opening moments to help others like me decide if they're worth the time. Today I'm playing Echo Knight, originally released in 1998 on the PlayStation and developed by FromSoftware. Yep, the same studio behind the Soul series. This game wasn't on my radar at all growing up, and I'd never heard of it until recently when I was going down a rabbit hole of lesser known horror titles from the PS1 era. The fact that it's a first-person game from 1998 and was made by FromSoftware instantly piqued my curiosity. It seemed like an oddball mix of slow burn psychological horror and adventure puzzler, and as someone who doesn't recall many first-person PS1 games that aren't shooters, I had to give it a look. Story. Now, I usually skip cutscenes where possible in the interest of squeezing as much gameplay in as I can into the first 20 minutes, but Echo Knight doesn't let you skip much, and in this case, I'm kinda glad I didn't. The story kicks off quickly and takes some wild turns that I didn't see coming. You're called in by the police to investigate your grandfather's mysterious death in a house fire. While exploring the burnt remains of his home, you're suddenly transported first to a train scene where a young boy gets shot for a strange crystal, and then later to a ship called the Orpheus. The timeline jumps are jarring, but in a good way. You immediately know something supernatural is going on. What struck me was how little hand-holding there is. Characters appear very briefly, including a terrifying old man who threatens to shoot his own granddaughter. You meet a ghostly ship captain who calmly tells you to stay in your room. It all unfolds at a steady dreamlike pace. Weird, slightly confusing, and oddly compelling. I didn't fully understand it, but it absolutely made me want to know more. Score, 7 out of 10. Controls. Controlling Echo Knight in 2025 feels vintage. It's a first-person game, which is rare for the PS1, and that means controls feel more like operating a tank than a human being. You move with the D-pad and use L1 and L2 to tilt the camera up and down. Interactions require a specific button, and there's another button just for identifying objects. That said, once you get used to the scheme, it becomes surprisingly usable. You can interact with most things you expect to: drawers, books, keys, clocks. It's got a bit of a point-and-click vibe, only in first person. There's no combat, at least not that I encountered in the first 20 minutes, so everything revolves around exploring and solving environmental puzzles. There's no tutorial, no hints, no hand-holding, which makes it feel a bit more immersive and also a little bit more trial and error. In a way, that kind of rawness actually adds to the charm. Once I got over the initial clunkiness, it felt like playing a haunted escape room built in the late 90s, and to be honest, that's not a bad thing. Score, 6 out of 10. Atmosphere. Atmosphere is where Echo Knight really starts to show its strengths. It doesn't go for cheap scares or constant tension. Instead, it builds a creeping sense of unease through minimalism. Dim lighting, soft ambient noise, and surreal jumps in time all make you feel slightly off kilter. You're never quite sure what's around the corner or what era you're even in. That said, because you're jumping between 3 different locations in such a short time, a house, a train, and a ship, the atmosphere doesn't always have time to fully settle. You're constantly being moved around, and just as you get used to your bearings, you're whisked off to somewhere new. It's kind of cool for variety, but it does make it harder for the tension to really simmer. Still, the creepy vibe is there, especially when you meet ghostly characters who talk like they're still alive. That sense of offness stays with you. It's not terrifying, but it is kind of haunting. Score, 6 out of 10. Music and sound. The audio here is all about subtlety. There's very little music in the game, and what does exist tends to underscore key cutscenes rather than in-game exploration. This works well for the atmosphere. You're never told how to feel through dramatic stings or ominous piano. Instead, you just kind of hear the creak of floors, the wind outside, or the eerie silence of empty rooms. The standout moment for me was hearing voice acting for only one character, the ghost ship captain.
What are you doing here?
It was unexpected and actually kind of chilling. The voice was clear, deliberate, and genuinely eerie in the otherwise quiet world.
You shall not leave. You mustn't go outside of this room. Is that understood?
It almost made me wish more characters had voices just for that unsettling contrast. Sound effects themselves are pretty standard for the time. Footsteps, object pickups, door creaks, all perfectly serviceable if not mind-blowing. The sound design isn't flashy, but it's doing a quiet job in the background, and it helps to hold the whole atmosphere together. Score, 6 out of 10. Graphics and style. For a 1998 PlayStation game, Echo Night is visually impressive in some really specific ways. The environments are textured and layered with surprisingly effective use of lighting and shadows. The burned house feels like it's crumbling around you, the train is tight and claustrophobic, and the Orpheus has this eerie, timeless vibe, part cruise liner, part ghost ship. What really impressed me were actually the character models. They're clearly pushing the PS1 hardware, high poly for the time, with expressive animations and some genuinely creepy faces. The evil old man who appears early on looked like something straight out of a Japanese horror film. And while, yes, the limited draw distance means that a lot of things fade off into blackness, it actually works in the game's favour. The visual limitation creates a sense of dread, as though the world itself is only half real. It's a clever use of a constraint, and it's something that I really appreciate as a filmmaker. Score, 8 out of 10. Gameplay. In 20 minutes, you get a good chunk of what Echo Night is really about. You explore a house, find keys, unlock new rooms, solve simple puzzles, all while navigating spooky environments and triggering cutscenes that shift you between timelines. There's no combat, which is actually a nice change of pace, and the game really wants you to take your time poking around. The puzzles were easy enough. One involved finding a key to open a grandfather clock, and another had me matching statue positions to a painting. There was nothing too taxing, but enough to keep you moving forward. The joy here isn't in the difficulty, it's in its discovery. There's something deeply satisfying about slowly piecing things together while feeling like you're in a haunted museum. That said, if you're looking for action, this isn't where you're going to find it. The gameplay is deliberate, almost meditative. I enjoyed the simplicity, but I can also see how someone with less patience might bounce off it. Score, 6 out of 10. Final verdict. Is this worth 20 minutes? Well, honestly, I enjoyed this one more than I expected. It's not a thrill ride, and it's certainly not going to be for everyone, but if you're into slow-burning psychological horror and exploration-heavy gameplay, there's something here for you potentially. The atmosphere, the story hints, and the surprisingly decent graphics, they all add up to a game that still has merit, I think, even after all these years later. It really didn't blow me away, but I did find myself thinking about it after I'd stopped playing. That's a good sign. I might come back to this one on a rainy afternoon and see where the mystery leads. It's a strange, quiet little gem, and it's worth a look if you're curious about FromSoftware's weird, horror-tinged beginnings. Final score, 6 out of 10. So, have you ever played Echo Night or any of FromSoftware's older titles? Let me know in the comments. Did I miss something brilliant in the first 20 minutes? Drop a like and subscribe if you want more bite-sized reviews of retro horror and forgotten games. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you next time on 20 Minute Gamer.